Yep, when you've been making cards like a pro, you're going to have lots of scraps lying around. You know those pieces that you can't throw out because they are too big to ditch, but too small to turn into a card. Now, let's use them in some cool ways and make something pretty to shrink that pile, so let's get to it. I'm going to use some happy and bright cardstock colors in different sizes, and let's start with a little hack. In case you want to cut up some strips from a longer piece of cardstock that doesn't fit the platform of your cutter or trimmer, then I have a little trick for you. Because you can add a complete piece in the trimmer and then cut off a small bit by measuring it, but that's a bit of a pain adding that piece back and back and back again. So I came up with this little hack. I have a post-it note and I'm going to line that up with the lines that are on my platform. So I'm going for the 6-inch mark and then I add my post-it note. And then with my post-it note I can measure on the other side. If I want a strip for like say 1/2 inch, I just slide it to the right and then cut off 1/2 inch. And this will save me a lot of time adding that paper back in the trimmer and again and again. I have a nice thin paper with lines and I have a double-sided adhesive sheet. I peel away the backing of that double-sided adhesive sheet on one side and fold the corner. Then I line it up with my lined paper. And once I have it in place, lined up along two sides, then I press the double-sided adhesive down and I'm going to peel away the backing while I'm pressing down that double-sided adhesive on my paper. And this way I will get it straight on my paper without having to cut up lots of pieces because it's all crooked. So that's how I like to do it. So that's another little hack that I like to use. And now let's start with the first card. So I have the paper with the lines and the double-sided adhesive on top and I peel away part of the backing and I have a bunch of strips and then I'm going to line up the strip and I use the lines on the paper as a bit of a guide. Now first I'm trying it with the sticky side at the top, but the sticky side at the bottom worked better, so I turned the paper around and then I add my first strip, and once that first one is in place, then the rest is simpler. It's always the start that's hardest. So I'm going to add my strips a bit alternate so I get a lot of variation in color. And this is a great way to use up some shorter strips as well. So this paper is the size of 2 complete card bases, so I'm going to make sure that I have some diversity in the middle as well. And then I just add all those colors filling up that paper until it's completely filled at the top. The reason I'm using this linear paper is not only because it's easy to line up those cardstock scrap, but also because it's thin. So if I want to die cut it afterwards, it will be very easy and it won't be too thick to run through the cutting machine, as well as it's easy to cut with a paper trimmer. And then I'm going to cut those cards to size. And when I did that, off camera of course, I found out that I had this really cool strip at the side. They are attached at a very small point, but I think this is a really fun element to use on a card, so you will see that in a bit. Question: what is the criteria to decide to keep or ditch a scrap piece? Tell us all about it in the comments below. So I added one panel to the card, and cutting those panels to size gave me another fun element that I can use on another card. And I trim off those little bits, and I'm going to come back to this one later as well. But first, let's get on with that fun surprise garland. I'm going to cut some V-shapes out of those little flags, and I'm making them all at a different size. So shorter ones, longer ones, just a variation of lengths, which will give you a very playful effect. This way you can make the most of those strips, the small ones and the longer ones as well. Then I'm going to add some glue to the back of all those flags. And just a tiny bit is enough to make them stick to my card. And then I'm going to add my banner at the top of the card and the corners of those flags lined up on the folded side of the card. And then I just press them down, and you can wiggle with the spacing in between the flags now because I'm using glue, which will give you some wiggle room if needed. I cut off those little bits that are sticking out, and then I put this card aside, and I will come back to this one later as well. And for this card I have that lined paper with some double-sided adhesive, and I have a bunch of colorful pieces next to me in all different sizes. And I'm going to add the colors in rows on top of each other, so layering them on top of each other and on top of the previous color, so you get this roof tile layering effect. So I'm just adding all the pieces and adding the different rows. And I'm getting some really cool color going on my card base. You don't have to use this many colors, you can use less colors if you want to. I like some colors. I needed some colors this week, so I'm using a bunch of colors for this one. And as you can see, I'm working on multiple cards at once. Sometimes you have to give yourself a little bit of time to think over a card or to get some ideas going, and putting cards or projects aside for a little bit is a great way to come up with some even better ideas. It's called productive procrastination. Isn't that a good one? I think that's a keeper. And then I'm going to trim off all the bits that are sticking out, so I have a nice card panel. And in case you want it to be a little less flimsy, you can always add some glue in between those layers. You can just fold a row back and then add some glue, and that's super easy to do. And this is how I finished the card, with a black on white sentiment added on a bigger pink mat with some black thread winded around it for some super cool texture. I'm going on with another one of those stripe panels, and I have a bunch of circle dies that I'm going to add to the panel. I add some tape to keep them in place, and then I ran it through the cutting machine, and this gives me a really cool card panel. And I'm laying my panel on top of a white card panel. And then I'm going to add those circles that I cut out back in place with a bit of glue and some tape. And then once they are in place, I can take off that panel. And that will give me 2 cards in one take. And I'm going to add some smaller size circles in the middle of those open spaces, adding a bit of color in that white again. And then on the other card I'm going to do some doodling, just some scribbling, like this is my doctor's handwriting, so you know how doctors write. So I'm going to doodle around my circles, and a bit of black, so a hint of black or a touch of black always helps to lift those colors, especially those colors that are on a bigger white or light surface. Then some added black is always a really cool option. And here are the finished cards with a black and white sentiment added on a colored mat, added on a piece of foam to get it a bit raised and add some dimension. As my dad would say, simple but effective. And then I have my flags. I'm going to doodle on them as well. I'm going to hang them on a string at the top, and I'm going to add some stripes for stitches. Later I decided to turn those stripes into doodle lines, and I added a black sentiment on white and some colored banners to the back, also with some doodling. Next I have the other stripe panel, and I cut out a circle, and on the edge of that circle I cut some smaller circles. And I have cut those circles again out of another color, and I embossed those. And this will give me some really cool texture when I add those circles in the open spaces. And then I'm going to add some greenery and a flower to finish this card, letting all those colors from the background return in front, with the flower, the greenery and those pink circles. And this makes a pretty colorful card with lots of layers, dimension and texture, and lots to see, just the way I like it. Then I have that card with the stripes on the side. I'm going to add 2 more long strips in the same colors, and I'm adding the word fantastic black on white on a piece of foam for some dimension. And what were the smallest pieces that you keep or you are using? Well, I'm going to use some like tiny pieces now, using up all my scraps, because these super small pieces, they make some really pretty sprinkles. So with some glue to the background and a sticky tool to pick up those tiny bits, you have a sprinkled background in a jiffy. And it's actually pretty cool to do as well. It's fun, just believe me, it's fun. And then I have that circle cut out from the previous card, you know, the one with the flower. I cut out some smaller circles out of this circle as well. And I'm going to fill them up with some more circles. And out of those circles I'm going to cut smaller circles again. I'm also cutting some circles in the same size and a different color, and a smaller one, and I'm going to run it through my new Big Shot switch, which I really love. This is the end of me being unplugged because I've gone electric, and I really love this machine. You can use all your plates, dies and everything. The machine will adjust with the sensors inside, so it will adjust to the thickness of the sandwich that you put in the machine. And you can use all the same sandwiches that you are used to with the regular regular Big Shot. The only thing I found is that the plates warp a bit faster than with my regular Big Shot, but when you turn them each time that you use them, they will stay nice and straight, so that's one thing to keep in mind. And you can find the link to the machine in the description box if you like to check it out. So I've cut those circles and now I'm going to add them back in place on my card. And all the shapes fit inside the smaller shape, so I'm just going to glue them in place. And then I'm going to add some more circles on top. And I'm just checking with the color to get some diversity on my background. And once all my circles are in place, I've added the word happy in black on white on a blue mat and raised a bit with some foam again. And then I'm going to doodle along the edge. Just some fun doodling, scribbling. And this is done in a jiffy as well. And it's fun to do, so there you go. Another card done. Now, did that help shrink your pile of scraps? Or do you need some more inspiration with cardstock? I have some ready to watch for you right here. All binge watch ready. There. So enjoy and make sure to keep on crafting. Now, did that help shrink your pile of scraps? Who wrote this text? I did! It was me.